Our Town Westerly is made possible by the following premier sponsors. Mott & Chase, Sotheby's International Realty, taking pride in representing properties throughout Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and uniting buyers and sellers. Westerly Hospital, serving our community for over 90 years with family-centered medical care close to home. Freemasonry, a part of the greater Rhode Island community for more than 200 years. To be one, ask one. And the following patron sponsor, Ocean House.
Westerly, Rhode Island, a postcard-perfect town at the southernmost and westernmost points in the state. This beachfront community boasts miles of shoreline and is home to the popular summer communities of Mesquamaket and Watch Hill. But there is much more to Westerly than sand and shells. There are miles of open space, impressive architecture, and a revitalized downtown make up the nearly 75 square miles that about 23,000 Rhode Islanders call home. Westerly is also rich in history. Quarried here for decades, the granite industry was the cornerstone of life, the economic engine of the town, with more than half of Westerly residents making their living creating carvings from stone. We take a look at the history and Westerly today, the people, places, and things that make this town so special to those who call Westerly home. It's their vision, their voice. This is Our Town Westerly.
Joshua Babcock was born in Westerly in 1707. His two grandfathers, John Babcock and Tobias Saunders, were two of the original 4 English settlers here in 1661.
Joshua Babcock built this house in 1734. He was the first Rhode Islander to graduate from Yale.
Joshua was Westerly's first physician. He ran a large farm here, maintained a small retail store. He was a close personal friend of Benjamin Franklin, who was on several occasions a visitor in this house.
The roof of the house has the lightning protectors, the long rods that Benjamin Franklin invented, more or less, and I don't know if they're the original, but they're the exact style of what Franklin had given Dr. Babcock originally put on the house.
There are 4 features of this house which make it considered a mansion in the colonial era. The first is the width of the floorboards, because all wide lumber belonged to the king for shipbuilding, and you had to be someone quite important to get away with having wide floorboards in your house. The second is the height of the ceilings. In the colonial era, people were shorter, and ceilings were low because you heated your house with fireplaces, and of course heat rises. The third reason this house is considered a mansion is the beautiful corner cupboard in the corner. The fourth thing in this house, which is most unusual in a colonial farmhouse, is the banister in the front hall, which is a beautiful carved banister.
And only 2 families lived in this house in 280 years. Orlando Smith was cutting stone, and he was always looking for good stone and found an outcropping on this farm property. Made an offer to buy it and bought it in 1846. And it started the very first granite company in town. Eventually, there was over 100 companies involved in the granite business here in Westerly.
We knew the granite history in town and thought, well, maybe we could go somewhere with that. So the idea of having a granite museum sort of grew up. It's sort of a chronological walk through what the granite industry was. It just seems to me that we see a lot of 2nd and 3rd generation people that suddenly realized that Grandpa wasn't just working in a quarry, he was working in an industry that made this town important. It wasn't just blocks and curbstones, it was an artistic industry.
In 1900, 57% of the population worked in the granite industry.
For people to know that their forebears worked in this industry, I think it gives them a rich feeling of the fact that people came before them.
If you don't preserve it, it's eventually gone.
Hi there, I'm Brett Margraf, current president of the Westerly Masonic Foundation, home to Franklin Lodge number 20, Narragansett Commandery number 27, Order of the Eastern Star, Deborah Chapter number 9, and International Order of Rainbow Girls, Westerly Assembly number 7. We've been here in Westerly since 1857, and here at our current home since 1957.
I'm Eric Ross. I'm currently the master of Franklin Lodge number 20 here at the Lodge building in Westerly. I'd like to welcome you to our home. Freemasonry has always been very popular in Westerly.
I know we had over 200 members in 1995. I think 210 or 215. But it was still going down. In fact, one of the problems we had is a lot of World War II veterans were Masons. They joined right after the war ended. And they had almost 500 people in this lodge at one time.
Freemasons are not operative Masons in actual laying of stone, although some are. Most of us practice what is known as speculative Masonry, whereby we take the precepts that were handed down through generations of master builders, and we use those as a foundation on which to build our own moral edifice. Franklin Lodge was organized under a dispensation on December 20th, 1856. The lodge was chartered on May 25th, 1857, and on July 8th of that year, the charter was received and the officers were elected. Franklin Lodge used to be located on High Street. We have a few examples remaining which we found in the archives of our lodge that actually show the lodge room at High Street. It was a very large and grandiose room. These columns were a gift to Franklin Lodge. Was in August of 1894. We have had these columns in use ever since, and we use them at every one of our meetings. In 1953, the members of Franklin Lodge, along with the members of Pawcatuck Lodge, who shared the facility on High Street, decided that the climb to the third floor of the storefront where they were residing was too much, and each one of those Masonic organizations decided to build their own facility. Westerly took their Square and Compass Club here on Elm Street and put an addition on the back, which is our current home.
We've been involved with many of the historic events here in Westerly.
One feature of Westerly that dominates the downtown is the Westerly Town Hall, known as the New Town Hall, which was cornerstone was laid in 1912 by the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island. We have this photograph amongst our archives at Franklin Lodge showing the laying of that cornerstone with a number of Masons in the state and also of the Grand Commandery of the state in the background attending the ceremony. When Masons lay these cornerstones, it is said to bring health, prosperity, and peace to a building through that cornerstone. America's history has been full of famous Masons, names that are well known and well recognized. Names like Washington, Franklin, Truman, all great Masons. Westerly has a long history of Masons in its town and in its history too. And we keep photographs of every past master who has served Franklin Lodge. Since 1868, starting with James Hoyt, names like Stillman, Babcock, Potter, have all served their brethren at the Lodge of Franklin and leading the group of men and this organization.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your visit here to the Westerly Masonic Foundation, home to Franklin Lodge. And remember, no Mason will ever ask you to join or to become a Mason. So remember, to be one, ask one.
Westerly Library in Wilcox Park is located in the heart of downtown Westerly along the Pawcatuck River. It serves two towns, Pawcatuck, which is part of Stonington, Connecticut, and Westerly, and then the greater South County area of Rhode Island. Memorial and Library Association was established in 1892 to construct a memorial for the soldiers and sailors of the Civil War, providing a free public library to the community.
I came here quite often as a child growing up, into the children's room, which was a wonderful room, and I enjoy it more now than I did as a child.
Libraries have certainly undergone a change really in the past decade. However, the basic use of the library is still the same.
People can come here and use the computer to find a job, to do some research. Upstairs is one of the larger galleries in the state.
Everyone thought that the books were going to go away. People still really love to hold the books and feel the books and smell the books.
I want to hold it, I want to smell it, I want to feel it. Absolutely.
We have a fantastic special collections and local history collection.
It's a beautiful building. The architecture is fabulous. It's got a nice red tile roof, original. And over the years, the additions and improvements made to the library always incorporated the architectural integrity of the buildings. And it's surrounded by a beautiful park and trees.
Wilcox Park and Westerly Library are connected. We're part of the same memorial association. We're governed by the same governing board. We're one and the same as a nonprofit. Wilcox Park is really three things. It's a collection of historic monuments, it's an arboretum, and it's a community space. The history of Wilcox Park starts in 1898 when the Memorial Association contracted Warren Manning to do a design for the park. He designed it in the style of the time, which was a Victorian strolling park, and over time it added parcels of land to grow up to 15 acres, which it is now. Since the 1950s and 1960s, when plant species became more readily available in the nursery trade, the caretakers here at Wilcox Park started adding these different types of trees. Now fast forward 60 years, now we have mature specimens of unusual trees.
And the park is a venue for many, many events throughout the year, such as the Summer Pops and Shakespeare.
And we will have town band. Westerly's home of the oldest running town band in the country. So they will perform at least 4 concerts per year in our historic bandstand.
There's just so much, you can go on and on. I just encourage people to come in and explore for themselves.
Over 100 years ago, a traveling carnival show came through Watch Hill, Rhode Island. And on their departure, they left behind the merry-go-round and these beautiful creatures here. And from that point on, it has gone through various iterations.
This could easily be the missing link of carousels in this country. It's ironic that after there were thousands of carousels, and maybe there's only 200 of them now, that one of the first ones is actually one of the last ones that's really intact, and it still has all its original 20 horses. And that's one of the reasons for preserving it. It's the only flying horse carousel of its kind in the world.
These are the original horses that have been here from the very, very beginning. So they're 100 and something years old. And in that type of lifespan, there's going to be a certain amount of weaknesses, and those weaknesses have to be addressed.
Each year, as the horses come back, they come back and they're worn right here on the knees. There's also cracks underneath.
And these little stress fractures show up in the paint. And when that happens, it allows things like moisture and water to get in, which then starts corrupting the actual wood and the joints in it.
They have asked me to do some replicas that could be on there for periods of time while we're restoring the old ones. So when something's damaged in the summer, there has to be something to replace it. So the longer you can keep them going is really what we're after in preserving the horses, and one way to do that is to have other horses that can be on to lengthen the lives of those that are originals. When I build a replica horse, I do it really in much the same way they would have done it 150 years ago. I buy approximately 10-inch by 2-inch boards and take those boards and glue up something. It almost looks like a mailbox. And then cut out a series of legs, and ironically, the legs, all 4 of them, are very similar, on a bandsaw. Well, this gives an example of what the horse legs start like. And then once it's in its box shape and it's glued together, I start to carve it down. I just do some rough carving to start with 1.5 inch chisel, and then finer chisels. Every day that there's a replica horse on the Carousel, that means one of the originals lives a little longer.
If you were to talk to any small child, those experiences that they had whirling around that merry-go-round and trying to grab that ring is something that is part of their fabric of their lives.
The Westerly Land Trust preserves are special places that resonate with each of us in different ways. These are places of recreation, inspiration, and reflection. These are open spaces where we can breathe a little easier, think more clearly, and rekindle our connection to the natural world.
Since the 1990s, the Westerly Land Trust has become a leading organization in the town of Westerly, preserving open space, facilitating downtown redevelopment, and building recreational and educational resources and programs for the people of the community.
In all, the Westerly Land Trust holds close to 1,600 acres in our care, with most of them available for public recreation. With over 20 miles of trails, there is plenty of room for exploring and enjoying the land. Recreational visits and special events provide us with a tangible connection to the land. The annual farm dinner that highlights local agriculture and dining under the open sky. School field trips that show children the wonder of nature. And reunions of groups like the Girl Scouts, who once camped at Wahanita Preserve.
What drew me to the Land Trust? I think it was partly the mission of the Land Trust, just preserving open space, hiking trails, and beauty, and places of the heart, and all that. It's just the preservation of open space. Said simply, you know, it's beautiful, it's enjoyable by people and animals. It's also, in my very firm opinion, it's preserving the value of our town.
These places also touch our lives every day in ways we may take for granted. They offer scenic vistas as we pass through town, protect the drinking water that flows from our tap, and store floodwater to spare downstream homes and businesses. Westerly Land Trust properties safeguard the natural environment where many wildlife species thrive. From toads to turtles, from ducks to deer, from bobcats to beetles, the preserves are teeming with life. These many values make the land an integral part of our existence and our community.
Often when we were enjoying a canoe trip down the upper Pawcatuck River, or fishing in the ocean, or maybe blue crabbing on the Pawcatuck River here in front of the house, I always had this feeling that I was concerned that maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now this would all be gone. And I thought it was important that I get involved in a way that might preserve this for others in the future.
Our urban efforts save important buildings and parcels in Westerly's downtown, a vacant lot that is now a community garden, the Industrial Trust building that houses our office, the United Theater that is to be revitalized for performing and visual arts, and a Main Street parcel that was transformed into a seasonal ice rink. Much great work has been done, and much more lies ahead. We take seriously our commitment to protect Westerly's open spaces and special places forever.
Right now, downtown Westerly is booming. It is amazing to walk the streets to see what has been going on. It's like a fever.
But downtown is a little special. It's an intact downtown, and we're very fortunate to have the architecture and businesses. The foot traffic and the number of people that are walking and driving through town has increased significantly.
Chuck Royce has changed the landscape of our community. He's made a positive economic impact like no other before him. When Superstorm Sandy swept through, devastating Mesquamaket, he immediately helped set the momentum for the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce's Bring Back the Beach program. He believes in creating opportunities, and he seems to measure his own success on his ability to help others achieve theirs.
Chuck has a strong interest in the economic vitality of downtown Westerly, an inherent sense of community. And on July 4th, on a very rainy day, Chuck came to the Mystic store to Bank Square Books We went up to my office, he put his feet up on my couch and said, I can't imagine a town without a bookstore. I have a space, and if I build it, and it doesn't cost you anything, will you run it? And I didn't miss a beat by saying, sure.
Chuck has always been a great supporter of the Westerly Land Trust. Ever since the days of our first land acquisition project, Avondale Farm Preserve, back in 1998. He was one of our staunch supporters who stepped up to make that happen, and he's been there for us ever since. Partnering with Chuck on our urban initiative has set the Westerly Land Trust aside from other land trusts nationally, and for that we're grateful.
Chuck has had this vision of creating a space for really high-quality artistic events. Imagine a Lincoln Center here in Westerly, where you come to the United Theatre and learn not only about what's coming on at the United, but also what's taking place with all the other arts organizations.
And he's always concerned about the children, and giving the children of our community a place where they can go, and being able to go to the YMCA, enjoy the park, enjoy sports, get health care, and also being able to get a good education.
One of the first opportunities Chuck provided the YMCA through the Land Trust was the Washington Trust ice skating rink. And it would not exist without Chuck's tremendous support.
We started talking and he said, downtown Westerly needs a community college in the middle of town. And I said to myself, where in the world would we put a community college in downtown Westerly? We searched, we found a spot, and it's happening. And it's all because Chuck has that vision, and because he attended a community college, he knows the value of it.
If we're very fortunate in our lives, we have people who brighten our days and make our lives special in the moment, and we can be grateful for such family and friends. And then you have exceptional people like Deborah and Chuck Royce, whose extraordinary generosity and foresight have made a difference in our community, not just today and now, but for generations to come.
Westerly Hospital is a unique place, and in my opinion, a special small hospital. It's not about size, as we know, and being a small community hospital gives excellent personalized care. It offers expertise beyond the scope of a small area. So when it comes to specialists, it has a very, very good group of doctors. And people sometimes don't realize that.
The hospital was really envisioned for decades before it opened in 1925. 100 years ago this year, Louise Hoxie, who had been a longtime resident, died and left in her will $10,000 to establish a foundation fund for a hospital in Westerly, which at that point did not yet exist. And she stipulated that the funds were to be invested and built upon and additional gifts made until it reached enough money to build a hospital, which at the time was thought to be about $200,000.
Westerly Hospital is a small community hospital that really listens to the community and provides the services that the community needs. Rehab services to educational programs. We offer it so that our community members do not have to travel outside the community with their loved ones. And we really are very lucky to have the variety of physicians that we have at Westerly who can offer the services that they offer. Our community needs Westerly Hospital. We're located, as everyone knows, halfway between New York and Boston, and we have physicians who offer the opportunities that our patients need and resources that our patients need.
To me, Westerly Hospital is unique and so important to our community because it's physically here. It's like, you know, the town of Westerly is so close-knit that the hospital is right down the street, it seems. And especially as an EMT, having the Westerly Hospital here right on Wells Street, you know, our transport time is just a few minutes from any place in town, which is just wonderful. You can't get that in a big city hospital sometimes because you're stuck in traffic or you're coming from quite a distance to get to the hospital. So having Westerly Hospital right here, pretty much in the center of our town, is just so wonderful for so many people. As a patient, I have always felt very comfortable here, even though it's a town hospital per se. I did not ever feel the need that I had to go to Boston or out of town. I always got very comprehensive care here, and I always felt as if I was a neighbor and like a welcomed friend to the folks here. And I think in particular as a patient, you know, when I was waking up in the recovery room, the woman who's telling me, the nurse who's telling me, it's okay, Dawn, it's all over, you're all set, wake up, lives down the street from me. You know, I had her kids in school as a teacher, you know, and I just was like, this is wonderful. And I felt so much more at ease, I think, than I would have been at another hospital where perhaps I wouldn't have known those folks.
Our town really wouldn't be what it is without our hospital, and it's quite obvious that our hospital wouldn't be here and wouldn't be what it is without the people of the town of Westerly and surrounding towns who have always been the ones who have cared the most that there is a hospital here and who have seen to it that there is.
When I first heard that PBS was doing a segment on Westerly and businesses and families there, it's kind of my whole relationship with the town is due to my family. My mother's family was one of the first settlers from Italy to come to Westerly.
Hey, put me on the movie. Hi.
We are in the north end section of Westerly, Rhode Island, and we started here to show you that this is where most of the Italian immigrants settled when they came over to Westerly. Here we are on 9 Pond Street in the north end. This is where my father's family, when they came over from Rhode, Calabria, they came and they stayed in this exact house here back in 1957. Okay, here we are on 89 Pierce Street, where my grandparents later moved from Pond Street, as you see by the photo. Born in 1859 in Cogliano, Calabria. This is a picture of my great-great-grandfather, Francesco Bruno, his wife Teresa, and his son Riccardo. This is my mother's side of the family, who would later be the founders of Westerly Packing. He moved here in 1890, came to America in the early 90s, and settled into this house on 83 Pleasant Street in Westerly's north end. Next to 83 Pleasant Street, the family built another home on 81 Pleasant Street, where my great-grandfather lived, Riccardo Bruno, where they opened up a meat store. The neighborhood meat store was in this location till 1978. The meat store will later be moved to Springbrook Road in Westerly. Due to the slaughtering of animals, they wanted to go to another location versus being in a neighborhood area. And then when my father came over from Italy, him and my mother married, and they took over the family business and they moved it to a different location. So we've been here for, I'm actually 5th generation in the family business. We've become known for the local Italian grocery store, carrying many imported products, even from our hometowns in Calabria. We focus still on the fresh meats. We make our own sausage, our own meatball mix. Those are still the same family recipes that were 5 generations ago. One of our big items is a dried sausage. We call it supersada soupy, which is more or less from our hometown of Italy, but we brought it over here to Westerly. That's changed from just making it in a couple months during the year to making it every day, 200-300 pounds a day throughout the whole year. To be a local artisan is actually a privilege. You know what I mean? And that's what we consider ourselves. We make all different types of sausage. We don't use any starter cultures, any nitrates. And the government pushes you to use that stuff, so you have to push back not to use that stuff. And that's what we've done. We have a USDA inspector on site 5 days a week. And they want you to go towards the chemicals, and we won't allow it. It changes the taste, and it's not as healthy and as natural. So there you have it. My family, our business, our town. We currently employ over 15 employees. and we're on our 6th generation of working here. My name is Bruno Trombino, and thank you.
Public education is so important. It's actually the foundation of our whole democracy. I believe that in my heart. And I believe as part of the future, we have to work with our public education and move it forward from preschool, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, all the way up to high school. We can provide alternatives for our students. It's not just about going to a 4-year college anymore. Programming innovations all fit into that kind of thinking. Holistic, whole child thinking from very young to very old, developing individual pathways, personal learning opportunities, and we're getting more and more diverse and creating more and more programs along that line. The newest pathway that we've engaged in is called PTech, and that is we are one of 3 communities, Providence, Newport, and Westerly, that are engaged in this pathway development for our students. It's an incredible option for them. They're able to start in 9th grade and work towards their high school diploma, and at the same time get some real development in clean and advanced manufacturing, so they get certificates of understanding and skill and ability, and also before they finish and leave our school, they can walk away with an associate's degree. All of that for free. This is the first generation, essentially, in the history of the world, and certainly in the history of the United States, can reasonably expect to live to be 100 years old. It's incredibly important for us to kind of provide those students with us looking future for them and looking at pathways that they can learn, that they can take to develop their opportunities.
It's believed to be the oldest Thanksgiving Day rivalry in this country. Last year was my first year here. Although growing up in a neighboring community, I was aware of the hype of the game and the importance of the game, but you really couldn't fully know it until you were part of it. The days leading up to the game, there are events every day, including in school, in the evening, the players, the cheerleaders, the music program, and just the community as a whole really coming together for their town. Although it is a rivalry, and of course each side really is invested in that part, it is more about the event. And the game on Thanksgiving is actually just a culminating event, and both communities really rise to it. But when it's over, it's a friendly rivalry also.
It doesn't matter, what records are. It doesn't matter if a team is 9-0 going into the game. It doesn't matter if a team is 0-9 going into a game. It's its own separate season. And, that's taken a little bit for me to get used to here as well. I look at it like we have a 10-game season, and most people around here refer to it as a 9-game season, then Thanksgiving. So that's how big it is. It's always present, but no, we try not to talk about it. And that was kind of one of the change of mentality of this year, was that we're not just going to look forward to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's a huge game, obviously, and Stonington's our rival, and it's a big game for the community, for the school, for everybody. But we want to focus on the 9 games before that.
I imagine both towns were playing football and being so close and being connected or actually being connected by a bridge, that it probably just made sense at some point. And I know in the early history of Westerly High School, in the early 1900s, I should say, before the establishment of the Interscholastic League, which I believe was in 1932 in Rhode Island, we have memorabilia from where we played in like an Eastern Connecticut League. So it wasn't that uncommon for us to play Connecticut schools. It's not unusual for Westerly High School or Stonington High School graduates to marry somebody across the river, or to gain employment across the river and then settle in that other community, so that they end up with their kids going to maybe a different high school than one of the spouses did or one of the parents did. So on Thanksgiving Day, although that the Westerly High School graduates have that bulldog through and through, their children may be on that Stonington side, or at least students at Stonington High School, so there's that shared piece there. So everybody has to pretend that they're fully invested in both sides. So that is part of it. And then you still have the families, the parents and the grandparents who have the allegiance to whatever town or school they went to. So it does sometimes get, and you may even have siblings that went to either Westerly or Stonington High School or both or something like that. So it's not that uncommon where we have people that move across the river. So I think we've won more Thanksgiving Day games, but they've won 5 more overall or something like that. So I could be backwards on that, but it's really quite remarkable when you look at the history of a rivalry, because you always want to win, but really the greatest thing about any rivalry is, for it to be a rivalry, is that there's a real balance there, in a competitive balance.
My name is Chris Walsh. I am a lifelong resident of Westerly, Rhode Island. I have a video production company in town, and occasionally I go out and shoot some of the events that happen in our community. One of the events I try not to miss every year is our Penguin Plunge. It happens on January 1st at noontime every year. It's been going on for about 10 years. Where men, women, and children all dive into the icy Atlantic Ocean to support our Warm Center. The Warm Center is an organization which helps house and feed our neighbors in need. Then, in April, the town comes together for our Pawcatuck River Duck Race. About 20,000 rubber ducks are dumped into the Pawcatuck River, and the ones that make it across the finish line first win some great prizes. It's a fundraiser put on by the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce, and it helps 40+ local schools and nonprofits raise money for their worthy causes. And then in May, it's the Musquamacket Spring Fest, which has lots of entertainment for the whole family. Music, rides, food, fun, games, a car show, a petting zoo. Just lots of entertainment, lots of fun for everybody. Since 1947, crowds have gathered together here in Westerly for the Columbus Day Parade. This parade's been going on for almost 70 years. Bands and Boy Scouts, businesses, police departments, fire departments from Westerly and surrounding communities all march down the Westerly streets with pride. Another great event that happens in late November here in Westerly is Santa's Arrival. Santa Claus makes a dramatic entrance into downtown Westerly on a Westerly fire truck. There's thousands of kids waiting in anticipation to meet Santa and other holiday characters. It's really a great event for the whole family. There's so many great things to do in Westerly, so many great events that happen throughout the year. I'm proud to be a Westerly native and to be raising my family in the town that I grew up in.
I think about the attributes of Westerly in writing the beach, the river, the downtown, the excellent school system, the awesome neighbors, and I think about the entire community, even the airport, a nationally recognized library. I think about all those things together, writing them on a postcard, and then sending them around the world would come here, because it's just such an awesome place to be. It's a great place to live. It's an incredible community.
When my son Dorian learned that his cancer was no longer treatable and that we would stop chemotherapy, we made it very clear to him what that option meant for him and his life. And he made the decision to stop chemotherapy, to stop treatment, and just enjoy the time that he had left with his family. During that time, he told his father that he wanted to be famous in China before he went to heaven.
He told me, that he wanted to be famous. I posted it. Within 2.5 hours, I had pictures from China. I had pictures from Australia.
就这样的一个小朋友，我们第一时间和孩子的家长取得了联系，表达了我们团队想要替孩子完成这个心愿，这样的一个意愿。
慢点啊！为了美国的小朋友是吧？对对，是。我们尽点心意。我来了！
来自中国的问候。
His request to be famous in China became global. People from all different countries were holding up signs with the hashtag DStrong, showing their love and support for Dorian.
Juniors, I, S, or G at the far end of the field.
Expressing our solidarity and support for his fight.
What does it spell?
It's amazing, actually, how many people actually care.
He's captured the hearts of the world.
It's about his strength, his beauty, and the real message he wanted to send, which was to spread awareness for pediatric cancer.
Currently, all pediatric cancers combined only receive 3.8% of all national cancer funding. And after we saw the power of that photograph had, we decided that we wanted to see if we could do more. So I started to photograph 19 other children with pediatric cancer here in Rhode Island, all in the same boxing glove stance. And we've turned it into a photography exhibit in hopes of raising greater awareness for pediatric cancer. That's such a beautiful memory to me, knowing that all of these children, for as sick as they are, they're also still just children.
In a world with so much negativity, it's just been so heartwarming and inspiring.
I just hope everybody can take this and know that no matter what comes your way, you just keep smiling and keep moving on.
Our Town Westerly is made possible by the following premier sponsors. Mott & Chase, Sotheby's International Realty, taking pride in representing properties throughout Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and uniting buyers and sellers. Westerly Hospital, serving our community for over 90 years with family-centered medical care close to home. Freemasonry, a part of the greater Rhode Island community for more than 200 years. To be one, ask one. And the following patron sponsor, Ocean House.